Good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this edition of El Cafecito. With us today, we have Dr. Andrea Robledo with the, we're going to go ahead and restart that. I already know.
Okay. Hey, it's your show. I'm good.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this edition of El Cafecito. With us today, we have Dr. Andrea Robledo, Director of STEM HSI Success Programs with the Department of Engineering. How are you doing this morning?
Good. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Wonderful. And I'm Aaron Espinoza, Inclusion and Engagement Leader with the Multicultural and Student Activities Programs. So let's go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Awesome. Would you consider yourself an early bird or a night owl?
So when I read this question at first, I was thinking I'm like the mid-morning. I wouldn't consider myself a super early bird, but my best working hours are definitely 9 a.m. to lunch, because as soon as I have lunch, the day is pretty much done in terms of like heavy thinking.
See, I prefer, I'm with you on that. I think I can, I'm not sure. Because I pride myself on being able to adapt, so like, but it's always in those sweet spots. Like it's either in the very late hours of night or like in the very early hours of the day that I'm like the most productive. I don't know why that is.
I think because everything's quiet.
Yeah.
Like if it was easy if I just woke up on my own, it would definitely be early morning. The problem is sometimes I don't wake up that early on my own.
That's all right.
So maybe if we consider early bird the moment you wake up, then definitely early bird.
I think we can quantify it as that. I think that's fair. Are you a coffee or a tea person?
I am definitely a tea person, but I drink my tea with cream. So okay. Yeah, a friend of mine introduced me to tea the English way, and I love it. There's nothing like it.
Never going back after that, just it's
no. I mean, I drink sweet tea without anything, but even then, Thai tea is really good and it has cream.
Okay, awesome.
But I have mine ready.
How do you stay motivated?
So I kind of cheated on this answer. I try to listen to what my inner self is telling me in terms of where my motivations are for the day, where my energy is. And typically working at the university, there's a huge to-do list. So every day it could be full of anything. So I try to listen to what I most want to do at the time. Of course, that doesn't always work out because you have deadlines and you have to abide by those. But typically, if I listen to where my energy is for the day, then oftentimes I'll work on things before they're needed. And so then when the deadline comes, it just works out. But for the most part, I try to sort of listen to whether I'm in like a super research mode or if I'm like brain dead and just need to do the like copy paste kinds of things. I try to listen to that and stay motivated that way.
See, I think that's a pretty good logic to follow by, at least from a student standpoint. I think that's how I follow along, especially with the way we approach education this semester is very much so online at your own pace sort of kind of way. And anytime that I felt myself becoming like lost to whatever video I was watching, I said, no, I've got to come back to this, otherwise I'm not going to give it the attention it needs. And it's like listening to that after that point is pointless. So I agree with you on that.
Exactly. I think the only thing that's sort of you have to keep in mind if you follow that is you have to have a regular sort of habit. Yeah. So long as you have a habit that you're going to sit down and accomplish some work in the day, then I think you can follow those motivations pretty easily.
So next question, very serious question for you. Did your first car have a name? If so, what was their name?
So the first car that I had in high school was a Grand Marquis, which is a huge car. And it was like made out of steel. There was nothing that was going to dent this car. And I was even in a car accident once. That wasn't my fault. I was stopped at a stop sign and two cars hit themselves and then ran into me. And the only thing that happened was the driver's side door got jammed. So this car was like impenetrable. So that's part of it. But the other thing is I'm also sort of like a staunch rule follower, or I was more of a rule follower as a high school student. And so my boyfriend at the time, his best friend used to call my car the paddy wagon, not only because it was huge and could fit everybody, but because he thought of me like the police.
Oh.
Not that I'm a narc or anything, but just
No.
like we have to do what we have to do. Like we have to follow the rules.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's amazing. Um,
How about you? What did you have a name to your car?
I actually did. I still drive her, actually. I consider her a her. Yeah.
Yeah.
She is a 2014 Camaro. Her name is El Mexicana.
Nice. What color?
She's black, yeah.
Nice.
Black with chrome rims. I always wanted the darker rims, but I just never got to it. I'm too busy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
If you had your own late night talk show, who would you invite as your first guest?
Oh, I see. I missed the first guest part. I was like, well, late night talk show hosts have 3 people. So I gave you 3 answers. I was a little bit upset that I didn't get more well-rounded in my answers, but the first person I picked was America Ferrara, the actress.
Yes.
Love her. I first saw her in Real Women Have Curves, and that was like one of her first major films. But since then, I've followed her career and her activism and kind of the role that she's played in the Latino community has been really inspiring for me. So she was the first one I picked. Given sort of where we are in time, I also had to pick Kamala Harris.
An amazing interview.
VP-elect, yeah. I think that would just be awesome to sit down and chat with her. And in that same vein, this is why I said I wasn't very well-rounded in my answers, AOC. Alexandria.
That would be amazing. That'd be really cool, in my opinion.
So I think having all 3 of those women would be just like better than the talk.
Oh, absolutely. The conversations you'd have, that'd be like a record breaker, in my opinion, views and whatnot.
If we could just get a hold of producers to bring all those people on the show at once.
Let's go. If you had to sing karaoke right now, what song would you choose?
So the song that came to my mind first, not gonna lie, also influenced by current times, is Como la Flor. But not just any version, the live version from Corpus Christi, because I can do the beginning guy really good.
Okay, so we're gonna go off on a little tangent. Have you seen the new STELena series yet?
I'm about halfway in.
Yeah.
I'm watching it with my dad and my sister. And so we got through the first 4 episodes before we had to take a break. So I have held restraint to watch the rest of them. I think the only thing, like, I get there's tons of people who are disappointed about it. I get that. But I think the thing that bothers me the most is the men have all of the speaking parts. I'm pretty sure if I sat down with a timer, it would be 3-to-1, the father speaking versus STELena herself speaking. And that to me just does a disservice to the whole, like, why call it STELena? Why not call it the Quintanilla family?
Yeah. So. No, and I guess that would have been my next question. How do you feel about it so far? But no, that's something I picked up on as well. Just kind of like, wow, like just little, like it wasn't big, but I started to notice it as I watched it through the series, like,
Because you expect it in the younger years, right? Like she probably didn't have a lot of things to say, but we were getting into like, we got as far as the first Tejano Music Awards. And it was still the little pieces that they show of her in the dialogue is like caricature. There's no depth.
And it felt so much so, when they were working towards that, that first record label, that it was so much so about the father and the son versus her. As like, well, what is, like, and of course it's a story about growth and whatnot, and how their trials through all of this, but I got that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was glad that Suzette got her little like moment of fame in the first episodes, but still.
Yeah.
And even the mom, like they tell the dad's story and they don't like his background, but they don't tell the mom's.
She's almost static, if you will. Yeah. We have to get back to it, unfortunately.
Sorry. We can talk about that all day.
I love it. What would be the most surprising scientific discovery imaginable?
So here I kind of went in a different direction than what I had originally thought. And I think 2 things, and I'm going to start with the second thing first. If there was a way to measure faith, I think that would be a huge scientific discovery. But then along with that, I think if science could and definitely prove that God exists, I think that would probably be like major.
That's always, I'm always interested in kind of like the theories that people have, is it's kind of like and sometimes they do get a little bit far-fetched, but there's always like enough where I'm like, okay, that could be plausible, but we don't have enough to like go continue further. And I'm always interested in those kind of things.
Yeah, I just wonder in terms of like the impact of something like that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, obviously people would choose not to believe it. I mean, we live in a time when people don't believe
Oh,
that
yeah.
science exists in disease control. But
Mhm.
yeah.
You're right about that. I just think, oh yeah, I think you couldn't have said it better. What would the title of your autobiography be?
So here I went with in between. I feel like for the most part, my life has been in between things. Number one, I'm biracial, so my mom is white and my dad is Mexican American. So I was always a little bit in between there. I remember in junior high, this girl turned around and asked me, because my last name, she's like, "Are you Mexican or are you white?" And I was like, both. Like it never felt like I had to choose one. And it wasn't until that moment that I felt like I had to choose. But then also just in terms of like my political stance and my spiritual beliefs, I always feel like I'm a little bit in between. I'm not quite all all to the left,
Mhm.
and I'm not quite super conservative. I think I can see a lot of the gray.
Mhm.
So I think I would call it in between.
And I think that's great, considering the society we live in, and in all facets, really, we're always kind of, even from a young age, we're pushed to like, pick one or the other kind of thing. And it's just like, I mean, from my experience coming up, it's always been about choice, but at the same time, as I've gotten into, more, young adult years, I've started to realize, it is a gray. It's a balance, if you will. You have to see both sides to truly understand. And I really appreciate that I can relate that to someone else as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's no absolute, and it's always circumstantial. I don't care what people say. Whatever decision that you make, it's always going to be influenced by the current circumstances of what you're living. So
Every, everything's unique. Everything's changing. It's always a fluidity to it, if you will.
absolutely, absolutely.
What is your fondest memory?
So this one was also really hard for me. There's two that I'll share with you. One is not my memory, but it's a memory that my grandmother, it's a story of me that I don't remember for myself, but it's a memory that my grandmother used to share all the time. And that's my grandfather was a volunteer fighter. And so every year in the summer, we would go to like they had a big convention, volunteer firemen's convention. And during those conventions, it was like a weekend long. They would have games and different kind of contests that volunteer firefighters could do. And at the end of the evening, they would always have a dance. And my grandma used to tell the story of how I was little. I was barely walking. And one of the gentlemen that was their friend would pick me up and dance me around the dance floor time and again. And she said, at the end of the night, I came back to the table and I threw my head back and I said, "God, I love to dance." That's not my memory, that's her memory, but that is definitely like a part of who I am. So that's one. And then the other one is definitely related to that. I have this memory of, I was probably in like 5th or 6th grade, and I used to spend summers with my dad in Kansas. And we went to, I think it was a wedding once. I couldn't even tell you what the event was, but I just remember dancing with him the whole entire night and like not even caring about what happened outside of the music that was playing on the dance floor.
I love that. That's such a rich and vibrant, thing to recall on, something to hold with you all the time. I love that.
Yeah, I definitely love dancing. So, there you go.
Did you love working from home, or would you rather be in the office? Is there a balance of both that you like the best of, kind of like pick and choose kind of thing?
Yeah, so right now I feel like I'm in that balance. I did really enjoy working from home. It felt like it lowered the pace and the stress during the end of the spring. It didn't lower the workload, but it definitely kept things in perspective, maybe more than we had before. I'm here at my house, so I could do laundry while I was doing 100 other things. But I think what I like the most is when I'm on campus at work, the thing that I love the most is seeing the students and talking with them and sort of connecting with them throughout their day. So I love that about being on campus. But in terms of the work that I can get done, I'm way more productive at home just because there's nobody here to come and like interrupt your thought for 5 minutes. You can just stay focused.
See, and I think I'm the same way to some extent. I think I can pick and choose certain things that I do, like about each. And you're right. I'm definitely more productive at home. I can just kind of run through each task, and then the one pro to being back in the office as well is that the communications is that much faster. Like if I need something, I can run over to someone's office, be like, hey, can you sign this for me, kind of thing. And that's
Yes.
the only nitpick that I had with like working remotely is that like there was such a delay in communication sometimes. And I guess it's a trade-off as always.
That's true. I think we've learned over the last 9 months or so, though, how to manage those better. So I'm wondering if things won't stay sort of permanently changed in that way. Because I feel like I've benefited a lot from the things that have happened since COVID. I was way more connected with friends that were at a distance because people were so used to video calls and things like that. So I kind of like that part of it too.
Oh, for sure. I agree. How do you make your decisions? Is it based in logic or intuition?
I tend to see myself externally as a very logical person, but I know that the decisions that I make are almost always based on intuition. And then I like logically think my way through them to provide support for them. So I would say intuition informed by logic, if that makes any kind of sense.
I like that a lot. It's just kind of like, you're pragmatic, but you run it through a filter almost. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, you have to me, I think too often people will use logic as a way to sort of dehumanize decisions, and you have to keep people in mind whenever you make decisions.
Always. Would you consider yourself a traveler or a homebody?
Definitely a traveler. I was super sad because I was finally to the point where I had saved enough money to do some like real traveling when COVID hit. So I'm still waiting for all the travel restrictions to be released. There are places in the world that I want to go and see, and my coworkers have been to all these other places and are from these other places, and so it's kind of like, but I want to go. I want to
enjoy it as well.
And now I know you, and you know people there, so it'll be way more fun than just going to some random place.
Oh yeah. What was your quarantine routine?
So I think of myself as a good starter. I start strong. And so every morning of the quarantine, I would get up, I would get dressed, and I would like report to my home desk. But it was probably around August that I hit a wall, and I was just like, oh, I don't think I can do this anymore. And it got really hard around that time, just before the semester started. Once the semester started and we were able to do a little bit more balance, it helped tremendously. But I think I started out strong, and I maintained that routine as much as I could, because I knew that if I didn't, I wouldn't be productive.
And with that being said, I think that's something that we didn't really think of, as well as, that the fatigue that we unanimously found, being everyone being, isolated in that. I just, it's like you said, unique circumstances. We never would have found out that that's something that could happen to many people,
That's so true. I mean, you learn a lot about yourself. I learned that I'm super lazy. So I need to the exercise I get going up and down the stairs at work. I need to find ways to put that into my everyday life.
Have you completed anything on your bucket list?
So this is an interesting one. Back to STELena just for a moment. Over the weekend, this was never on my list, but my cousin put this in complete perspective. She was like, it's like achieving a bucket list item that you didn't know you always wanted. So over the weekend, an article came out on CNN, and I was interviewed as a part of the article, and I was quoted in the article, and not, I mean, that in and of itself was super
That's
cool to me, like a
cool.
national news outlet.
Yeah.
But the article was about Selena, and it was about how Selena's identity helps us as Latinos, like all find our place in the same space, even though we're worlds apart and different from all aspects. We all find this single place of relating to one another in Selena. And so the fact that not only was I quoted in a national news outlet, but that it was about Selena was just amazing. So that would be my list.
I love that. That's amazing. That's really cool. I'm like,
What's funny is I told my family, I was like, this is way cooler than the PhD, and it was free. So
like, this speaks for itself. I love
and
that.
my friends gave me the hardest time. They're like, all you've accomplished, and this is what you're proud of. Like,
You're like, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I love that.
Absolutely.
You know, time to come down now. What is your favorite meal to cook and why?
So I'm not a cook. I really don't like to cook, but what's funny is I cooked yesterday, a big, huge adventure for myself. I cooked chicken tagine, which is a Mediterranean chicken dish. I did it without the tagine, but I think it came out pretty good. And my friend that I invited over, she enjoyed it. So we decided we would call that the one, even though I've only made it once.
Yeah. I always love.
Definitely the one.
I consider myself a somewhat amateurish cook. You know, I get lucky here and there, but like I enjoy trying new things like that. You know, I'm just kind of like, okay.
So what's your favorite?
So my favorite is actually, and it's a recipe that my mother passed down to me. Are tacos. So and that's something I always try to. You know, you're never going to be able to get it. You know, just it's a family thing. Like you'll in my opinion, I will never be as good as the way my mother cooks. I can try to, you know, replicate, but you know, I feel like I've gotten pretty well at tacos, so I'm okay with that.
Nice. Just tell me where to be and when.
Awesome. What modern invention do you believe could be heavily improved upon given enough time and effort?
So I said cars.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. Number one, they've improved tremendously. I just recently got a new car and I love it. It basically drives itself. The cruise control adapts, the lane assist keeps you in the lane. You can like basically take your hands off the wheel. Not that I ever do that, but you can do all of that. But I also think fuel efficiency could be significantly improved. I think for too long, that industry has been influenced by oil and gas, and so they haven't tried to make those improvements. So I feel like that's one thing that could definitely be improved.
Oh, that's amazing. See, we interviewed Dr. Hollick the other day. He had the same response, you know, cars, and he said, you know, he said he sees within the next 10, 15 years, you know, an increase in autonomy, you know, vehicles and whatnot, you know, just kind of like.
I would love that. I don't understand why people are afraid of cars that drive themselves. I wish we had public transportation, because the one thing I love more than anything is to get into a vehicle and not have to think about what's happening.
You know. I could sit down and enjoy a book on a 2-hour car ride.
Exactly, right? I've always wanted to live in a big city that had a subway system so I can do just that.
Yeah. When was the last time you were stumped by a problem, and then how did you solve it?
So this question stumped me, and I think it's because of the second part. How did you solve it? I feel like everything that came to my mind were things that I hadn't solved yet. So I had to go back in the stretches of my memory. And I think completing the dissertation was definitely the hardest thing I had to do to finish my PhD. I won't lie, it took me all 10 years to finish it. So I was like up to the very last day that they allowed you to finish it. And the only way that I got through it was by doing small things every day. And I know that sounds super trite, but it's I would keep like note cards of everything that I accomplished for a day, just so I could have that kind of internal motivation.
I think that, and again, it's very important. I'm very much so that like I'm a back and forth person. Sometimes I will procrastinate and then realize, I'll look back on the times that I did little by little, like, why didn't I not do this then? You know, what's wrong with me? Why do I do this to myself?
Exactly. Well, and I'm deadline driven. No matter what it is, I'm definitely deadline driven.
If you have an unlimited supply of one thing for the rest of your life, what do you choose?
The internet.
The internet. Yeah.
Because then I can get everything else I ever needed.
Oh yeah, just it's that, fingers touch right there. I like that.
It's like the more wishes wish, right? You
Yeah,
just have
yeah.
everything.
I actually saw this meme the other day. It's the standard genie. The genie asks, "What do you want?" You have 3 wishes. He's like, "I'd like four more wishes, please." Granted, you have 3 wishes left.
Nice.
Like it, and I sat there dwelling on it, like, what? So and it's those little things. I don't know.
That's a good one.
If you could watch a movie again for the first time, what would it be and why?
So the movie I picked here was actually one of the movies that I have a good memory of seeing for the first time. And that's World War Z.
Oh.
So good. Because I think I went into it not knowing anything about what it was going to be about, so it was even better. But also because I love infectious disease movies. The other one, what's the other one with Brad Pitt? Or not Brad Pitt.
Is it it's not
Contagion? Yes.
Okay. That's a good one.
I have those movies. I bought them and I can watch them to fall asleep too. I just love watching that stuff. I don't know why I'm weird.
I would definitely. I definitely have to agree with you on World War Z. I would definitely, race that aspect of memory just to enjoy that movie again.
It was so good. It was so good.
If you could be immortal, what age would you choose to stop aging at, and why?
So I picked 34 because after 34, I had back surgery. So I want all of the range of motion that I had before. But also because the other part of me was like, well, I would pick now. I feel like I'm finally hitting my stride. Definitely older rather than younger, just because I feel like they say this, and I'm not quite there yet. So I'm still counting on it coming in future years. But the more you know yourself, then the easier life is, because you can let things slide that you wouldn't normally let slide. And you're more comfortable just sort of in your skin. And I think that I'm edging closer to that. And that's why I would pick an older age than super young.
I like that. I think, it's definitely different. People often say, oh, I want to be, 25 or something, those younger years. And I like to think that, I would, and, maybe that's just because I am younger and I haven't developed those experiences quite yet. But I don't know. I like to think that I could choose a younger age and continue to develop that as a person. I don't know.
Yeah, if you could have both, I think you're absolutely right. I would want all of the fitness and the health benefits of being younger, but I would want all the wisdom.
Yeah, but and I think that's where it comes down to, is it a one or the other kind of thing? And I think in that case, I would probably choose a later age. That way it would come with those that wisdom as well.
Yeah, if I could live immortally and have all the wisdom that I had gained, I might want to be 20 something. But if I had to stay with a 20 something mindset,
no, by no means. No. I have too bad of an impulse control that I cannot stay 21 forever.
Exactly.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
So a woman that I met in my first professional job, actually, it was my second professional job. I take that back. I was working at the University of North Texas, and she was the director of TRIO programs there. And I was talking to her about how I was thinking about going back to school and doing a master's. And she said, time's going to pass no matter what you decide on. It's really all about how you spend that time or where you want to end up at the end of that time passing. And to me, that has been one thing that I've carried with me the longest. I
like that. I like that a lot. I think it's just, I've never really thought about it, in that kind of sense of philosophy speaking, it's a matter of go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you start today what you want to have later? I mean, it's going to cost you something, but at the end of it, you'll either have it or you won't. The time is going to pass regardless.
Yeah. What is something that you got away with as a child that your family still doesn't know about?
So this was hard because I feel like my family knows almost everything about me. They're always in my business in a good way. But I think one of the things that they may not know is when I was in elementary school, the house that we lived in, I was trying to clean something in my room. I had spilled something, or I have no idea. And I carried bleach from the kitchen back to my room. And so there were bleach spots on the carpet. And I feel like, if I remember correctly, my sister's the one who got in trouble for that, not me.
See, I remember having those kind of adventures. Young. Those were always amazing adventures. If you could write a book that was guaranteed to be a bestseller, what would you write?
So I've actually thought about this one a lot. And recently I shared with a friend my idea for a book that I hadn't told anybody. So you'll be the second to hear this. And then, of course, everybody else. So if this book ever comes out, I'm coming after your audience.
I'm going to read it. You have one buyer. Two.
It would be a story that's set in a laundromat. And it would have like 3 different generations of women who would interact in a laundromat. But the overarching climax, or the big reveal of the story, would be that ultimately it was the same woman, just in different phases of her life. But you wouldn't find that out until the end of the book.
I like that. Just kind of like, it's on. I really like that. You know, I love it at the face value, and also down at, you know, like this in the the subtext of what the story has to tell. I really like that. You know,
yeah.
If you ever do write it, let me know. I want to give it a read.
As soon as I get to work.
All right. Would you rather live under the ocean or on the moon?
I said under the ocean because I feel like that's still one of the places that we have yet to explore that we have right here at our fingertips.
Oh, yes. Do you have any hidden talents?
The only thing that I could come up with was, and I learned this from my mother, is how to pack a car. Like, we can pack a car like nobody's business.
That's amazing.
And fit everything that you need to fit in it. Yes.
What was your total freshman move in undergrad?
So I had a hard time with this. So can you tell me your answer before I give you mine? Do you mind?
I don't know. I actually had a pretty non-traditional start to higher education. I actually took a gap year after high school and worked. And then, I kind of came upon this, I'm kind of in a slump, I'm just going to work, do I want a job? I mean, and there's nothing wrong with, going to a job every day. He's like, I kind of want more, like, I don't want it just to be like a day. I want to learn. And I think my parents were like, well, you have the opportunity, like, if you want to go and you're going to give it you're ready now. And I think in the long run, I think that's benefited me more than, jumping into college, not knowing what I wanted to do. And then, not giving it the time and the effort and the motivation that it would have required had I, high school into college. And that's not to say that that's not, some people can't do that. But for me, I'm glad that I took that year and the time to really think about it.
No, I think that's a huge benefit. There's, have you seen the movie Lions and Lambs or something like that? It has Robert Redford.
It's kind of old. Very familiar, actually.
There's a part in that movie where he asks his class, he's a professor, to design a policy of some sort. And the 2 students that the movie sort of focuses on, their policy is that everybody has to enlist in a year's worth of volunteer work before they go to college. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like an AmeriCorps enforced enrollment. And it happens before college for that exact reason, to sort of figure out where you are and what you want to do and where your interests lie. So I think that's super important. I don't think enough people do that. I think they're sort of just flowing with whatever their neighbor's doing.
I like that. I think that actually be like, it kind of turned into, the question turned into something else, but that's totally fine. I like that. But like, I think that would, in all honesty, that would be a great, thing to do, maybe, give more insight into what people are doing. Cause I know a lot of times we jump into something, you're like, you may go through 4 years of college, jump into a bachelor's, go into a job, and you do it for 2 or 3 years. Like, I hate this.
Yes.
What can you do at that point? You don't have that time, not necessarily self-exploration. Well, I mean, I guess it would be, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my answer actually kind of went along with that, honestly. So I think we were right in focus. And that was, I picked my major based on the first class that I liked in college. So I started as an undeclared student. And the first class that I really, really enjoyed was psychology.
Mhm.
And that's what I picked as my major. And I didn't consider like all the implications of what that meant for finding a job, for supporting myself, for kind of like where my interests lie. It was really just like, I have never experienced anything like this. I love learning this stuff, and that's what I want to do. And now that I look back on it, I've had the opportunity in the work that I do to look at income levels for every major. So for every type of major there is, undergraduate, bachelor's, master's, PhD, almost for every single one, I have picked the lowest paying degree plan, which is fine, right? Like, okay.
Yeah.
But it probably, if I had to do it all over again, I would completely change the path that I went down.
See, and I think it goes back to that balance thing. I think in our society, we're meant to, you know, and for me, I've been told by some of my friends that are philosophy majors, they're like, why aren't you philosophy? You know, like you can't make a decision kind of thing. I was like, and no, I can't, you know, like, and that's the sad thing that like we have, and, you know, that's just how I guess the world works. You know, you have to pick one thing, and it's like, you know, I enjoy physics, I enjoy philosophy, I enjoy astronomy, I like poli-sci, you know, why do I have to pick one thing?
Exactly. Well, and when you find the job that you love, it's going to include all those things. Mm-hmm. So it's hard because it's not a traditional path, I guess.
Yeah.
That part's hard.
What has been the best part of this semester?
So my favorite part of every semester, not just this one, is always the first week of school for a couple reasons. Number one, you already have an A in the class. Like everybody begins with an A in the class. You're not behind, you're all caught up. It's a fresh start. So you don't have, like you can make the semester whatever you want it to be, but also you're well rested for the challenges that lie ahead. So the first weeks of the semester are always my favorite.
I like that. And I think it's, you know, in that sense too, it's very important. It's like, you know, do that little by little, start those habits early on, you know, get to the library, sit down and watch your lectures, don't get behind.
Well, and I tell that to students all the time, especially those students that I work with in the engineering department. Like the first week is where you set the habit. So if you leave class A and every time you leave class A, you go to the UC and you chat with friends, that's going to be the habit for the whole semester. So it matters what you do in those first few days. Oh,
yes. What trait defines your style of instruction?
So I would say definitely interactive. I sort of try to approach classes like a workshop as opposed to a lecture. I know what I have to say. I don't want to hear myself talk all the time. I want the students to be working on something that's going to help them get a better understanding of the lesson. So as much as possible, I try to make it interactive.
I like that. You know, and as a student myself, nursing and engineering, you know, two different things, but, you know,
but basically hands-on, right?
Yeah, I really appreciate when my professors go out of the way to, you know, kind of like visualize whatever, you know, we're talking about, you know, whether it's, you know, a pulmonary embolism, you know, she relates it to, you know, a hose, you know, something, you know, that I can like, oh, okay, I understand now kind of thing. And those kind of what current fact about your life would impress your 5-year-old self?
And this one, it was super hard for me. Number one, because I'm trying to remember what my 5-year-old self was like, and what that self thought was cool. So the best I could do is that I finished a PhD, because that was never in my sort of spectrum of what I wanted to do. It didn't sort of come up until several years after undergrad that I even wanted to pursue something like that. As a matter of fact, as an undergrad, I was like, get me out of here. I'm done. I never want to see this place again. And then a year later, a friend of mine who graduated with me, we were talking and we were like, man, don't you miss finals? Don't you miss like all those late nights of like studying for hours? And we're crazy. But that was the thing that sort of I missed the most.
See, I think I'm going to look back on those kind of things, or at least I hope I do anyway. I think I'm going to look fondly on those, you know, those times where I spent, you know, hours with my study group, just like grinding away at looking at material, and then just, you know, shared crying and whatnot. Yes. I think
it's that shared experience for sure. It's that like lament of the stress and
yes. if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
It would be to be able to sort of blink my eyes and transport myself to anywhere in the universe.
That would be really cool. I like that.
No waiting for airplanes or paying for.
Um, what was an event that seemed to start awfully but ended up being great?
So the one that came to mind was this last semester, in the fall semester. Every year we do an engineering orientation, which is sort of a required event for all of our engineering majors. It's the one time that we get everybody together and sort of connect them to the ideals and the mission of our department. So given COVID restrictions, we weren't able to do it in person. We usually like to have a dinner and a engineering design challenge in the midst of all of it to get people interacting. So we had to do it online. We ended up, the platform was nearly impossible because with Zoom, you have a limit of 100 people. We had just over that. So we were afraid if we used Zoom and we had students who were trying to get in and then they were stuck on the outside, it would be awful. So we ended up using Blackboard.
Okay.
You can use Blackboard for big events, but no one told me, like, when you set up the event, if you click a certain button, no longer do you have the ability to do these other things, which is what I wanted to do. And so at the very beginning of the event, I realized none of the things that I had previously set up for like breakout rooms and stuff were fixed. So as the event is starting, I'm like rush to get all of it rebuilt inside the new parameters. Awful. I'm also in an office all by myself, similar to this, just looking at a computer screen. My coworkers in the faculty in our department and staff were all in their own spaces joining the event. And some would come and like try to ask me a question, and I'm like, I can't talk to you right now. I have to do this thing. I have to like get all these rooms built and then remember where they are. And then I couldn't force people into groups. So I was sort of like making up groups on the side and like writing down what I had said so that people would know where to go. And it was a mess. And I'm not going to lie to you, there was a moment when my mic was on and I was saying things that should never really be said.
No.
But at the end of it, my supervisor and the folks in the department were like, oh, it was so good. I mean, I was really surprised at how engaged the students were. And I was like, okay, if you say so. But from my perspective, it was the worst.
Oh, no, I'm completely with you on there. You know, Blackboard is either really great or really awful kind of thing. And with that, you know, we did the same thing with NSOs in the summer, and that was a lot because we well, the student assistants anyway, you know, give heaps of amounts of credit to our. So, who would you like to nominate?
I would like to nominate the academic advisor for the engineering department, Daniela Gonzalez. I would, number one, love to know her answers to all these wonderful questions, but also I think she has a lot to share with the students at ASU. So I would nominate her.
Wonderful. Well,
and she'll hate it too, but I love it.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for being on here with us today. You know, through hiccups and whatnot, you know, we're making it work for us.
Technology, I'm telling you.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you all for tuning in to this edition of El Cafecito. Be sure to tune in next time.